Alembic Pharma. This time the company did come out with a decent set of earnings where the margins have seen an expansion on a YY as well as on a quarter-on-quarter basis, while the numbers were also seen to be holding strong as the company registered a 12% jump on their profit figure on a YY basis. But let's understand more on the internals then and what is the way forward for the company. And for that, we are being joined by the management of the company by Managing Director Shaunak Amin is joining us. A very good morning and thank you so much for your time, Mr. Amin. First of all, I want to touch upon your API sales because that's been a point where most of the analysts and the investors are looking forward to your commentary. Even this particular quarter, API sales were down 15%. So, wanted to understand why is that so, and what is the outlook going ahead? Like, when can we expect this API segment to do well?
Yeah, so the API segment is a much smaller area for us as a corporate. It's not a top priority, but that being said, I think the API has seen a strong run up in the last few years. I think this year it's a combination of a lot of price optimizations along with some amount of price erosion. I think the combination of the two have kind of not given the kind of growth plus API running on a high base over the last 3-4 years. I think it's just a matter of some amount of market correction at this point in time.
All right, this is Shreyansi as well joining in the conversation. I wanted to ask you about your US business then because that has slowed down to 5% this quarter after double-digit growth in the previous 2 quarters. So what is the reason for this, and are you confident to achieve 10 to 15% growth when it comes to the US markets in financial year 25 then?
Yeah. So if you see, I think in the US market, we've been talking all along that there is price erosion. I think price erosion has been there this quarter also. I think if you see, our volumes have significantly gone up in the US on the back of some new launches, as well as getting some big orders. I think we have about 9 launches lined up in the subsequent quarters. And I think the visibility in terms of volume growth in the US at this point in time seems pretty good. We're quite confident of hitting our our target for the US markets in terms of growth numbers. A lot of that is driven by strong volumes and good launches at this point in time, despite the price erosions.
All right, Mr. Amin, I want to not just talk about the internals. I wanted to draw your perspective and have your intention on the kind of developments that we are seeing on the political front, because since the US presidential elections were through and both these parties were actually focusing on the cutting down of the prices of some of the key drugs in the US, and that's been a change in the government that we have seen with the new government in force. Wanted to have your take that how do you see the price erosion in the US? What is the outlook on the same? Do you fear that there could be some price cuts in the US markets? I'm asking and putting this question specifically to you, knowing that you are a major player in the US markets. You draw majority of your revenues from that geography. So wanted to have your sense on the same.
Yeah, so I mean, the short answer of this is, I think when they talk of price cuts, they're talking more about a combination of, not just generics. They're talking more so about the high cost of insurance, especially for the products under patent. I think it more refers to that than the generics at this point in time. And that's what we've understood over the last both the last two administrations in the US. At this point, it's too early for me to comment on saying what's going to happen. But if I could give you, what we've experienced in the past with both the administrations, I think in terms of, with the Republican Party coming back, I think we do have a history where I think at that time they were pro-business and they looked towards India to kind of supply their need for low-cost medicine in the US. So at this point, we're just neutral. I think we don't see any major downsides or significant upsides at this point in time.
Absolutely too early to comment at this point, but the historical trend does paint a comprehensive picture at this point, like you rightly pointed out. But I'm going to come to the India business now because acute business is down 2%. When do you expect a revival? And after single-digit growth in India in the second quarter, what kind of growth targets do you have? What are the targets that you're penciling in then?
Yeah, so I think on the acute side of it, if you look at the CAGR of the business over the last 5 years, I think there has been a significant base creation over the last 5 years where we saw, abnormal growth in, between 2020 and 2023, 24, which weren't natural. I think at this point in time, it's more of a mix of, you know, a high base effect combined with some amount of extra urban, semi-rural softness in the markets that we see. And I think FMCG echoes that sentiment. So that's where we are. I think in terms of revivals, it's hard for me to comment at this point in time about the next quarter. But I think going forward internally, we're quite clear on operational efficiencies that are going to allow us to overcome the low market growths. And I think it's just a matter of a few quarters at best before, some of these internal operational efficiencies start kicking in to kind of allow us to increase our delta in spite of a slow market growth at this point in time.
All right. Another point that I wanted to touch upon, Mr. Amin, is your margin profile, because what we see is that in the last 2 quarters or in the second half, your margin seen a little bit of jump up that we have seen at least in the last year. Wanted to understand that since the last 2 quarters, you have been holding that range of over 15%, 15.5 to 15.6% now. So in the second half, can we expect more margin improvement looking at the historical trends?
Yeah, so we don't give forward guidances usually, so I mean it's hard for me to comment, but it wouldn't be fair for me to comment at this point in time. But I think in the previous 2 quarters, I think we have worked a lot on, in terms of cost optimizations post the huge price erosions in the last 2 years for the US market. Along with that, I think our volume throughput has gone up. The relative delta of price erosion is significantly less now than it was 2 years ago. So that combined with some good launches, volume increase and product mix, I think it's a combination of these 3, 4 things which have allowed better margins this year or this quarter, sorry. So I think from a trend point of view, we're quite confident that this trend can continue at this point in time.
All right, so you did mention new launches. Do you suppose you could put a number on that firstly? And secondly, when you talk about your research and development spends, they have gone up to 8% versus 7.2% in the first quarter. What is the outlook that you have for the research and development spends as well?
Yeah, so I think historically we've been at a high double-digit base on our R&D spend, more to fill up the ANDA pipelines. I think going forward, we had given commentary that we expect single-digit R&D expenses. I think we maintain that. I think quarter-to-quarter variations is just a matter of allocation. So I don't think I can comment on one quarter as being representative of the whole year. I think it's just a matter of sometimes have certain expenses clubbed more in certain quarters. But I think we maintain that 7+ kind of run rate for the year. In terms of new launches for the quarter, I think we're quite confident to launch at least 7 or 8 products in the current quarter. So that's where we are.
All right. And any of the upcoming big launches to look forward to, Mr. Amin? And lastly, if you can give us some internals or some more details on the same.
Yeah. So I mean, again, I think I can't comment on the specifics, but I think we do have some interesting launches coming up. So that's at best what I can say. I think we're quite positive of some of the launch candidates at this point in time. Unfortunately, you guys know better than me that only once you launch in the US, then you truly get a sense of what the market is and where it is and what's the competitive intensity. But at this point, we're quite buoyant on the upcoming launches, on some of the upcoming launches especially.
And lastly, Mr. Amin, recently Novartis lost the bid to vacate the FDA approval of rival Entresto. So just wanted to have your take that Alembic has the NDA approval for the same. Any timeline or any more details that when is the launch expected from Alembic for this particular drug?
I think we'll update you as and when we have something concrete in our hand at this point in time. So.
Can we expect that to happen in the near term? Any more details on the timeline?
Yeah, I think we will be sending a formal communication to SEBI as and when the news breaks. So it's hard at this point in time to make any
Your point, Mr.
comments.
Amin, but really appreciate taking you the time out and speaking with us on the results and also sharing your outlook on the same. Thanks so much for joining in.